slides, pass incomplete. Reed.
At this point, we all know that the NFL is a quarterback-driven league. In order to really compete, teams need to have a steady, reliable signal caller under center. But for some reason, not all NFL teams are always able to find the right guy, and, well, the outcome is generally pretty disastrous. As a result, we've seen some pretty horrendous quarterbacks lead the charge for every single team. Today, how about we take a walk down memory lane and spot every NFL team's worst starting QB of all time.
The contact that's made. Warner with that right arm punching it out.
Arizona Cardinals, Ryan Lindley. I'm sure that Cardinals fans have done their best to pretend that this era of Arizona football never happened. But let's not forget about the infamous Ryan Lindley experiment out in the desert. In his first season in Arizona, Lindley finished the year with a 46.7 passer rating, having thrown 7 interceptions and no touchdowns. And the craziest thing about that year is that because of injuries to Carson Palmer and Drew Stanton, Lindley ended up starting a playoff game that season, which, expectedly, did not go very well. He threw for just 82 yards and 2 picks in a gut-wrenching 16-7 loss. Atlanta Falcons, Randy Johnson. After winning only 3 of 11 starts in 1966, Randy Johnson's rookie season, the man actually managed to win fewer games the following 4 years in Atlanta, only winning a grand total of 5 games in 26 starts during his 4-year tenure in the ATL. Not exactly what the Falcons had hoped for when they took him 16th overall in the draft, that's for sure. Baltimore Ravens, Kyle Bowler. Kyle Bowler, the poster boy for quarterback purgatory. He had the arm strength of a bazooka, but the accuracy of a drunk archer. Baltimore experienced a lot of pain trying to make him the guy when it simply wasn't going to happen. The guy's most memorable moment came during his pro day, which is a pretty strong signal that maybe the NFL just isn't for you. Buffalo Bills, J.P. Lossman. The Bills have had their fair share of QB disasters, but J.P. Lossman somehow out-disastered them all. To make matters worse, he was drafted in the first round in 2004, but the Bills would quickly learn that Lossman was a master of throwing picks and taking sacks. He made 33 starts, winning just 10 of them, while Bills fans spent every Sunday wondering what they did to deserve this. Buffalo thought that he'd lead them back to glory, but instead, he led them just to 5 years of pure agony. Carolina Panthers, Chris Weinke. Chris Weinke was about as bad as it gets for the Carolina Panthers. The former Florida State standout started a stunning 19 games for the team and only managed to win 2 of them. 2! During that stretch, he totaled 3,800 yards and 14 touchdowns to 26 picks. He was also part of that abysmal 1-15 2001 season. Yeah, all in all, not a particularly inspiring period of Carolina Panthers football, which, considering they had their worst quarterback of all time under center for it, really shouldn't come as a huge surprise. Chicago Bears, Jonathan Quinn. In 2004, the Bears handed Quinn the keys to the offense and then watched him drive it straight off a cliff. He played in 5 games and completed just 52% of his passes, with 3 interceptions and only 1 touchdown. His performance was so bad that Chicago fans started begging for literally anyone else. Quinn's NFL career sputtered out, and Bears fans still shudder when his name comes up. Cincinnati Bengals, David Klingler. The Bengals thought that they had their future in the 1992 first-rounder, but Klingler was as effective as a wet paper bag. David Klingler was supposed to be the next big thing, a cannon-armed savior for the Bengals, but instead, he was a human crash test dummy. The former 6th overall pick started 24 games, tossing 16 touchdowns and 22 interceptions while taking 82 sacks. He had no feel for pressure, no pocket presence, and by the end of his stint, no hope. Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Kaiser. The Cleveland Browns famously have a long list of guys that could take this dubious cake, but Deshaun Kaiser's rookie year was the ultimate dumpster fire, so we're gonna have to bestow him this honor. Now, in his defense, he was forced to lead the 0-16 Browns, but Kaiser tossed a league-high 22 interceptions to just 11 touchdowns. His completion rate barely scratched 53%, and every dropback just felt like a coin flip between a bad read and a worse throw. Watching Kaiser play was like seeing a quarterback simulation glitch out in real time. Dallas Cowboys, Chad Hutchinson. In 2002, the Cowboys hoped that they'd found a hidden gem in Hutchinson, a former MLB pitcher turned QB. But instead, they got a guy who looked lost every time that he dropped back. His 7-touchdown, 8-interception season was a clinic in how not to play quarterback. Just leave it to Jerry Jones to try and turn a pitcher into a quarterback. Denver Broncos, Paxton Lynch. The Broncos took Lynch in the first round, convinced that he was their heir to Peyton Manning. Well, spoiler alert, he wasn't. He was a raw, slow-footed QB with the decision-making skills of a 90s GPS. Lynch started just 4 games before Denver eventually just gave up on him. He couldn't grasp the offense, he couldn't read defenses, and he couldn't stay on the field. Just a colossal waste of potential. Detroit Lions, Joey Harrington. The Lions bet the farm on Harrington with the 3rd overall pick in 2002 after watching him dominate the college football landscape. But unfortunately, what they got was a quarterback who looked perpetually shell-shocked, playing behind a porous offensive line. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns and led the Lions to a miserable 18-37 record during his time as the starter. Granted, there were a lot more issues in Detroit than just him. And in many ways, he was very much a victim of his circumstances. But still, the results speak for themselves. Green Bay Packers, Brett Hundley. The Packers are one franchise that really isn't used to bad quarterback play. But they got a taste of it when Aaron Rodgers went down in 2017. Packers fans hoped that Hundley could keep the ship afloat, but instead, he outright sank it. He finished with 9 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and Green Bay went 3-6 under his watch. Hundley's inability to push the ball downfield turned the Packers' offense into an absolute slog. Thankfully, Rodgers' return made this nightmare a forgettable chapter. Houston Texans, David Carr. Carr had the misfortune of being the Texans' first ever draft pick and the human tackling dummy behind their atrocious offensive line. He was sacked an NFL record 76 times in his rookie season. Shell-shocked and skittish, Carr never developed into a franchise QB. He ended his Texans career with 65 touchdowns, 71 interceptions, and a 22-53 record. The potential was there, but man, the protection was not. Indianapolis Colts, Curtis Painter. When Peyton Manning missed 2011, the Colts turned to Curtis Painter, and it was like watching a toddler try to drive a Ferrari. Painter went 0-8, threw just 6 touchdowns to 9 picks, and looked completely overwhelmed. The Colts earned the number 1 pick in the draft thanks to his disastrous play. He was the poster child for just how quickly things fall apart without a franchise QB. Jacksonville Jaguars, Blaine Gabbert. Gabbert looked the part, big and strong, golden-haired, but the only thing that he really delivered was weekly disappointment. In 27 starts, he tossed 22 touchdowns and 24 picks while Jacksonville's offense sputtered and stalled. He had 0 pocket presence or command of the huddle, and boy, he had even less accuracy. The Jags tried to stick with him, but by year 3, they waved the white flag. Kansas City Chiefs, Brody Croyle. In a league where next man up is the mantra, Brody Croyle was a reminder that sometimes the next man isn't up to it. Croyle went 0-10 as a starter for the Chiefs over 5 seasons, never winning a single game. The Chiefs fan base knew that when he took to the field, it was a wrap, and it was in the worst way possible. Las Vegas Raiders, Jamarcus Russell. The gold standard of QB busts, Russell had a rocket arm and a work ethic that could be best described as non-existent. He showed up overweight, reportedly fell asleep in meetings, and his on-field play was even worse. In 3 years, he went 7-18 through 23 picks and made Al Davis regret his last great gamble. The $39 million mistake that Raiders fans just can't forget. Los Angeles Chargers, Ryan Leaf. Leaf was drafted 2nd overall in 1998, 1 spot after Peyton Manning, and that's about as close as their careers ever got. Leaf's tantrums were legendary, his turnovers prolific, and his leadership non-existent. Obviously, there were off-the-field issues going on that we now know about, but that doesn't change the fact that he flamed out in 3 miserable seasons of delivering a masterclass in how not to be an NFL quarterback. Los Angeles Rams, Dan Pastorini. Even though Pastorini played just 1 year with the Los Angeles Rams in 1981, the embattled signal caller managed to leave his mark on that franchise, and not in a good way. 2 touchdowns and a preposterous total of 14 interceptions is just about as bad as it gets. A far cry from what we've seen out of studs like Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff in recent years for the Rams. Just saying. Miami Dolphins, John Beck. John Beck's 4-game stint in 2007 was a bleak chapter in Miami's quarterback carousel. He didn't throw a single touchdown and managed just 3 interceptions before mercifully getting benched. Beck looked completely overmatched, fumbling the ball 7 times and completing just 56% of his passes. By the way, he wasn't much better in 2011 when he went winless in 3 starts for Washington. Minnesota Vikings, Christian Ponder. The Vikings reached for Ponder with the 12th overall pick in 2011, and boy, did they ever pay for it. Ponder looked completely lost, hesitant, and terrified to extend the field by throwing deep. In 36 starts, he threw 38 touchdowns and 36 interceptions, leading the Vikings to mediocrity, which is even more disappointing because they had all the pieces around him that was needed to compete. New England Patriots, Hugh Millen. Before Brady, there was a carousel of disappointment. Hugh Millen's 1992 season was a masterpiece in ineptitude. 0-7 as a starter, 8 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. His throws wobbled, his decisions puzzled, and Patriots fans prayed for a change. Luckily, they wouldn't have to wait too much longer as he was out the following offseason. New Orleans Saints, Billy Joe Tolliver. The Saints have a bad habit of picking bad QBs named Billy Joe. Tolliver's tenure leading the Saints offense was an exercise in futility. New Orleans just couldn't do anything with him under center. He went 2-9 in 11 starts over 2 years before the plug was mercifully pulled on his NFL career. New York Giants, Dave Brown. The Giants handed Brown the reins in the 90s, and he responded by setting the offense back a decade. In 53 starts, Brown had 40 touchdowns and 49 interceptions. This guy had a cannon arm, but just no touch, and his pocket awareness was non-existent. Older Giants fans still wake up in cold sweats thinking about those days. New York Jets, Browning Nagel. Browning Nagel's brief time as the Jets starter was pure agony. In 1992, he started 13 games, won just 3, while throwing 7 touchdowns and 17 interceptions, completing a grand total of just 49% of his passes. That is the kind of performance that would have the Jets fans begging for Zach Wilson to be back. Philadelphia Eagles, Mike McMahon. In the wake of Donovan McNabb's injury in 2005, the Eagles handed the keys to Mike McMahon. And, well, he promptly drove that team over a cliff. McMahon started 7 games, completing just 45% of his passes while throwing 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And that was for one of the best teams in the league during that era. Absolute insanity. Pittsburgh Steelers, Mark Malone. Mark Malone somehow spent 7 years in Pittsburgh despite playing like he had never seen a football before. Malone threw 54 touchdowns and 81 interceptions during his time in the Steel City, completing around 50% of his passes. Yeah. Not exactly that standard that Pittsburgh fans were used to seeing. San Francisco 49ers, Steve DeBerg. For a franchise used to having talent under center, Steve DeBerg had to be humbling. He went 7-28 in 35 starts with a 37-60 touchdown to interception ratio. Ooh, yeah, that ain't it. Seattle Seahawks, Dan McGuire. A 6'8" QB with all the mobility of an old refrigerator. Drafted 16th overall in 1991, McGuire never justified that pick. In 5 years, he threw just 2 touchdowns and 6 picks. His footwork was clumsy and his decision-making was worse, leaving Seattle fans to shake their heads, wondering what they ever saw in him. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Randy Hedberg. Some guys tease potential early, but Hedberg was not one of those. He never even won a game in his NFL career. In 1977, he went 0-4 for Tampa with 0 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Ooh, yikes. Tennessee Titans, Jake Locker. Locker had the tools, athleticism, a big arm, but his body and accuracy just betrayed him. He went 9-14 as a starter, couldn't stay healthy, and completed just 57% of his passes. Titans fans waited for the light bulb to go off, but it never did. Locker retired young, leaving behind a bunch of what could have beens. Washington Commanders, Heath Shuler. The 3rd overall pick in 1994, Shuler was the definition of a bust. He started just 13 games for Washington, throwing 13 touchdowns and 19 picks. That experience murdered his confidence, and his NFL career was over in short order. But hey, who do you think is your favorite team's worst starting quarterback of all time? What do you think we got right here? What do you think we got wrong? Was there anybody that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, then clicking that like button helps us out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.